Can you dig into a little bit more? So now you're saying there's actually a chart here. So you're powering it differently, and the release ends up being H2O, is what I see on this chart. Can you walk us through what I'm I don't know if you have that chart in front of you, but can you actually walk us through what we're looking at here?
Yes. What you're looking at now is our hybrid concept for turning iron ore into iron without those CO2 emissions that I was just describing. So what we're doing is that we're exposing iron ore not to carbon, but to hydrogen. And what happens then is that the oxygen in the iron ore moves not to carbon forming CO2, but to hydrogen forming H2O, also known as water, as a byproduct instead. And furthermore, we can use the fact that we have in both Sweden and Finland, where we are iron ore based, a virtually CO2-free power grid. So we can use clean electricity to make hydrogen out of water with electrolysis, hydrogen that we put into our processes, and then we get the water back as a byproduct. So we're not really consuming water, we're just borrowing it for a short period of time to lure the oxygen out of the iron ore.
A question that sort of comes to my mind that I don't think you can avoid is that we're 2024 now. A lot of the technology within this has been around. What's sort of what was the stopper for doing this? And I don't just mean SSAB, I mean other companies as well, other steel manufacturers. What is the challenge of doing? Was it the technology? Was it just not access to a clean grid that would actually give that kind of power? What were some of the hindrances from implementing something like this?
I think traditionally, to be honest, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. I mean, CO2 emissions weren't a big deal until 10, 15 years ago. We launched this initiative in 2016, and then we were quite early, actually. And there were a lot of doubt in the industry, would this work or not? Would it be better to look at carbon capture or something like that? But now we're doing this in pilot scale. We have a plant up and running, a research facility that does this, like I said, on a small scale, but in an industrial environment. And we're very, very happy with the results so far. We know that the steels that we produce in the future will have at least the same properties as what we do today, just with the added value of being made without any fossil CO2 emissions.
What is the urgency of this? And of course, there's the obvious, the environmental side, but I'm talking more about government pressure, your clients that are actually asking for supply chains with lower emissions. What is the pressure, and how are they sort of approaching it? What level of urgency do you feel coming from both the regulatory side and from the sector?
I think we can see both. If we start at the regulatory side, we do see that we have different kinds of penalties or taxes or charges for CO2 emissions these days. In Europe, we have an emission trading system. We can see similar mechanisms being implemented in many countries around the world. And I think we can see more or less the same development globally, but we are at different stages and different paces maybe, but the development goes in the same direction, certainly. So there are those kind of mechanisms coming, but I think maybe more importantly, many companies are committed to reducing their own carbon footprint, because there is, again, a little depending on where you are in the world, also a consumer pressure and a consumer demand for products with a reduced climate impact or carbon footprint, or what you want to call it. I think maybe the most obvious example right now is passenger cars, where we are starting to get rid of tailpipe emissions. And once we don't have those, the carbon footprint of a vehicle is pretty much related to the materials that it's
right.
And I think there is also quite a lot of awareness out there. There has been a lot of discussions, especially about hybrid cars how environmentally friendly are they actually, considering conflict minerals and rare earth metals and those kind of things that
Yes.
are involved. So I think that once you make it transparent and once the consumer knows what the options are, there is certainly a demand for it.
Right.
We can see similar things in the construction sector. For example, we can see that buildings these days are using less and less energy for heating and cooling and so on. And then again, the major carbon footprint of a building will be related to the materials that are used in building it, and where concrete, for example, has some challenges as well.